I'm like checking the viewfinder. I'm trying to figure out if this looks okay. I kind of hope it does. I'm gonna do one. Gotta frame it, and technology. This is here. It's the Galaxy Z Fold 4. This is my review. So if you remember, back in March of 2019, the first Galaxy Fold hit the scene. It was a bit of a mess, but Samsung fixed it like they fixed their exploding phones. And 4 years later, we have the Galaxy Z Fold 4. So compared to the jump from the Z Fold 2 to the Z Fold 3, the Z Fold 3 to the Z Fold 4 is not very significant at all. You've got spec bumps like you usually get, slightly nicer screens, slightly nicer design, it's still pretty thick though, and a very similar price. In fact, that price remained exactly the same. This phone still starts at $17.99. That's a lot of money for a phone. Now, for a normal sized phone, I could never imagine $17.99 being worth it. But because the Z Fold 4 can do this, like it's done every generation, gets so big, it's worth it to some people, but not everybody. During my review period, I was using the Z Fold 4 and I was alternating with an iPhone just to see if I missed a lot from the Z Fold 4. Turns out, yeah, you gotta be stupid to miss the big screen that unfolds on this phone. But day to day, this phone is still not very practical to use. It's really thick, it's bulky, it's heavy. I'm uncomfortable bringing it to the beach, to the bay, when I'm going kayaking. It's a very expensive phone. You don't want to drop it. You got to put it in a case, which makes it even bigger. I could go on and on about its shortcomings, but that's only because I'm more comfortable carrying a normal phone. Make no mistake, the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is a killer phone. Killer specs, good cameras, great battery life. It does this, that's cool, but it's expensive, it's less durable than other phones, and you kind of give up a lot carrying a folding phone. A lot of people have been able to get on the bandwagon. I haven't yet. I still can't make a folding phone my daily phone, but regardless, this phone is great, and here's why. On the hunt to find less wind.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
So, the design. As you would expect, it's big, it's chunky, it folds in half, and it feels really premium. And compared to the Z Fold 3, the Fold 4 doesn't look much different. In fact, you really can't tell unless you hold both of them side by side. It's technically 3 millimeters shorter and 2 millimeters wider when it's unfolded, and it's like a hair thinner. And by a hair, I mean literally a hair. It is not, I don't have a Fold 3, but it's a hair thinner, just trust me on this one. These changes are pretty insignificant, but they add up to a more refined feeling. The device isn't as tall as before, so it's a little bit more comfortable to use. And when you unfold it, it's a little bit wider, so you can get more on the screen, like a full screen video or more apps side by side, that sort of thing. Despite it being a little bit more refined, the Z Fold 4 is still a chunky phone. When folded, it's 15.8 millimeters thick at its thickest point, and it weighs 263 grams. That's a far cry from form factors like an iPhone, a Galaxy S22, or a Pixel 6. That's nice and thin and relatively lightweight, kind of fits in your pocket or your bag easily. This phone lets you know that it's in your pocket, it's in your bag. It's very noticeable. Still plenty portable, but noticeable. Holding the Galaxy Z Fold 4, two things came to my mind. One, it's incredibly premium feeling, as it should be. And two, it's incredibly slippery without a case. Samsung, I don't know what you were thinking making a phone that costs 1,800 bucks that folds this slippery, this matte finish, which is in this green color, which kind of looks green, sometimes kind of doesn't. With the matte finish, it's extremely slippery. And these rails, these stainless steel glossy rails, it's like, I'm gonna drop this thing at some point. Now, obviously a skin or a case is gonna fix that. I don't have a skin for it, but I do have this case from Samsung, which kind of just snaps on and snaps on again on the front. And this is kind of what you're left with. So you get some, I've been using this phone with the case on almost the entire time. It's sort of the only way I'll use this phone. It adds enough grip where I don't feel like I'm gonna drop it. And it's sort of necessary because when I'm opening this phone without a case, it feels like it's just gonna fly out of my hands. It's so slippery. This is a requirement. So around this really slippery phone, you're gonna find all the normal stuff. You've got stereo speakers on the top and the bottom, which sound really good. I'm really impressed with these speakers. I think they sound great. They're very rich. There's a USB-C port on the bottom here, and you have a ton of antenna bands. Now I'm calling out the antenna bands because I noticed that I got really good LTE and 5G reception with this phone. I don't know what it is. Maybe they added a couple more bands, whatever. It's really good reception. Now this is on T-Mobile, I should disclose. But I feel like with any other carrier, you're probably gonna have the same experience because this is an unlocked phone. It's not optimized for T-Mobile at all. So take that for what you will. I think it's really great, at least where I live. There's one more thing to note about the design here, and that's the fact that it's IPX8 certified, which means it's pretty good for water resistance. You can get it wet. You could maybe run it under a faucet. I don't recommend it, but maybe you could and get away with it. It is not, however, rated for any sort of dirt, sand, dust, anything like that that can get into this hinge here. It's just not durable enough, which is part of the reason why I can't carry this phone every day. I go to the beach, I go kayaking. There's a ton of salt in the water where I'm kayaking. I don't feel like anything drying and getting underneath of the display or inside the hinge or anything like that. So once again, take that for what you will. I don't recommend carrying this phone, at least to places where you have a lot of small minerals, such as the beach. Now, the displays. There's not much to talk about compared to the Z Fold 3, but that doesn't mean the Z Fold 4 screens are any less beautiful. They're both Samsung Dynamic AMOLED 2X displays, which means they're of the highest quality possible. You've got 6.2 inches on the front for the cover screen and 7.6 inches inside on the foldable screen. Both have slim bezels, 120 Hz refresh rates, up to 1200 nits of brightness, inky black levels, vibrant colors, sharp resolutions, you name it. Everything that you do on these screens is gonna look great. I've been watching a ton of videos, I've been reading lots of articles. Everything is stupendous. The inner display remains the only one compatible with Samsung's S Pen. I don't understand why they didn't just throw in support on the cover screen, but whatever. Sketching, signing documents, and using the device with the S Pen is great. Everything's responsive, it's virtually instantaneous, and it just feels natural. Now there are two downsides to using the S Pen with the Fold 4. The crease can get in the way of a smooth drawing experience, which isn't great for any artist. And you kind of have to find somewhere to store the pen when you're done. Now that case that I mentioned before has an S Pen slot on the back, but it makes it so bulky and so bulgy that it's almost not worth carrying around. Maybe one day we'll get a nice slot like the S22 Ultra has for the S Pen. Maybe we'll get a Galaxy Fold Note or something like that. Until that happens, you're left with finding a case that'll store the S Pen for you. It's kind of a pain in the butt. On the cover screen, Samsung includes a hole punch cutout for the selfie camera, which is unnoticeable the second you start using the phone. Now the folding screen sticks with the same under-display selfie camera as the Fold 3, this time with an improved 4 megapixel sensor that's a bit better hidden. And when apps with white backgrounds are open or you're watching a video, you won't notice this at all. But with the right lighting, it can sort of disrupt the pixels and you will see the camera. It's not necessarily ugly, it's just kind of there and you have to deal with it. Sort of like a hole punch cutout. But I didn't think it was a big deal. It would also not be a big deal if Samsung just did a traditional hole punch cutout. It'd definitely make the camera better inside. If there's one thing that I don't like about the screens on this phone, it's the aspect ratios. The cover screen's 23.1 by 9 aspect ratio is slightly wider than the Fold 3's 25 by 9, and the foldable display is 21.6 by 18 compared to 22.5 by 18 from last year. Now that's a little wider, it's a little taller like I had mentioned before, but it doesn't make app support any good. Any app that's not optimized for tablets or phone screens outside the normal 16 to 21 by 9 aspect ratio, things get weird fast. Instagram is a perfect example. It just sucks on both of these screens. Content's cut off, UI elements are all over the place, descriptions trail off to the right side without wrapping, stories just look hideous. So this is it on the cover screen. You can see that there. And this is it on the folding screen. I hate this. This looks terrible. And Instagram's not gonna do anything about it. Neither is almost any other app developer beyond Google. This is all part of a really long-standing issue that's not gonna get anywhere anytime fast. Developers simply will not optimize their apps for one device with weird aspect ratios. There's too much fragmentation, it's hard already to keep up with the vast majority of phones. They're just not gonna go out of their way for one that's shaped like a candy bar sometimes and then shaped like a square at other times. It just won't. However, if there's one app that is optimized sort of by mistake for the big screen, it's the Kindle app. The Kindle app is the best app for the folding screen. It is just wonderful. I highly recommend reading Kindle books on this phone. You will enjoy every second of it. This bell keeps ringing every time a new hour strikes. It's 6 p.m. now, so I guess it's gonna go off a few more times. Beyond the issues with third-party applications, the software on the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is great. Samsung's gotten a lot better at optimizing One UI for weird hardware like foldables, and this latest model is no exception. This time around, the Fold is powered by One UI 4.1.1, which is based on Android 12L. If you don't know what Android 12L is, it's basically Google's version of Android 12, but for tablets and foldables. It has a lot of more under the hood optimization to make everything a bit smoother on those weirdly sized devices. And the Z Fold 4 takes full advantage of that. It's terrific on this phone. 12L is responsible for the single best feature of the software experience, which is the new app dock at the bottom of the screen. It lets you flip between open applications, whatever's on your home screen. There's an app drawer button on the left that lets you pick any other app installed on your phone. And the entire bar can just be dismissed by long pressing it. It's really great. It makes the Fold 4 feel a lot more powerful. You know, it kind of leans into that multitasking powerhouse that Samsung wants the Fold lineup to be. There are lots of other multitasking tools like edge panels, floating windows, split screen support for running up to 4 apps at once, which is chaotic however you look at it. It all adds up to a suite of tools that make you feel a lot more powerful and a lot more productive when you're on your phone. And speaking of productivity, Samsung also throws in DeX support on the Fold 4. I used it for about 5 minutes and then unplugged it. It wasn't that great. So it's there if you want it. If you're an avid DeX user, please tweet me. I want to talk to you. There's also 5 years of software support for the Galaxy Fold 4. Samsung is saying 4 years worth of major software upgrades and 5 years worth of security patches are in tow, which is always great to see. I wish more manufacturers would stick to timelines like this, especially Google, who makes Android. And it's especially nice to see considering this phone is $1,800 and you're gonna wanna get your money's worth. So, performance on the Galaxy Z Fold 4 is terrific. Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 processor is fast, really fast. Compared to the standard 8 Gen 1 and earlier flagships from 2022, this chip is noticeably snappier and much more efficient. I was impressed with it when I reviewed the OnePlus 10T last month, and that same feeling extends to the Z Fold 4 tenfold. It's able to keep up with whatever I throw at it, whether it be 4 apps running at once or a graphics heavy game with music in the background. I ran Geekbench 5 for giggles and grins, so if you care about those scores, here you go. They're slightly behind the iPhone 13 Pro from last year, and they're about in line with what I got from the 10T and S22 Ultra. So it doesn't really mean much considering the Fold 4 is so snappy in real life. You're not really gonna have any issues with performance here. But I know a lot of people like to see those scores, so there you go. Now, there's 12 gigabytes of RAM in this phone. That's already enough for Android. But Samsung throws in this neat feature, and I have to plug it. It's called virtual memory, and it lets you increase virtual memory by 8 gigabytes. So with the 8 gigs of virtual and 12 gigs of physical, you can have 20 gigabytes of memory on this phone, which is a lot. Now, you're not gonna notice a difference by any means. There's absolutely no difference between 12 and 20 gigabytes of RAM on the Fold 4, but it's kind of cool that you can actually do that. There's also a bunch of really high storage configurations for this phone. So it starts at 256, I have 512 here, and it goes up to 1 terabyte if you're into that. So on the back of the Fold 4, you're gonna find 3 cameras. You've got a 50 megapixel main camera with an f1.8 lens, a 12 megapixel f2.2 ultra wide, and a 10 megapixel f2.4 telephoto with 3x optical zoom. That's a lot, but there's not a lot to talk about in terms of camera quality. These cameras are directly ripped from the S22 Plus from earlier this year. That means you get great image quality in almost every lighting scenario with good detail and sharpness, but Samsung will be Samsung, so it's not ditching its aging habit of going a little too extreme with HDR and color warmth. It's not as good, I would say, as the iPhone or as a Pixel. They're just a lot more well balanced. But regardless, for years, folding phones were not known for their cameras. I wouldn't say the Fold 4 changes that conversation at all, but it at least means you get flagship level cameras. Now, if you want more details on my full thoughts on the cameras on the Fold 4, my written review is linked in the description below. But regardless, these cameras are good. They're very good. Oh, I almost forgot. One of my favorite features on this camera is the camera viewfinder, which is just wonderful. You see how big that is? Isn't that great? Who doesn't want to take pictures on that? And there's a neat feature where, if I can find it, there's also this really neat feature where you can use the cover screen as a viewfinder to line up your subject. So, you know exactly how you're going to look in the end result, which is sweet. In terms of battery life, the Fold 4 has lasted me all day, every day that I've tested this phone. I was usually able to get about 4 to 6 hours of screen on time with like 20 to 40% left in the tank when I went to bed. That's really good for a phone with 2 big and bright screens and a split 4400 milliamp hour battery. It's just about on par with any other modern flagship that you'll find on the market today. So kudos to Samsung, they got battery life down pat. Unfortunately, charging is capped at 25 watts. That's pretty speedy by today's standards, but not that fast. I just reviewed the 10T, like I mentioned, and that has 125 watt charging, which is just insane. So for Samsung to include 25 watts here, kind of lackluster, but it's fine. It's still able to juice up from 0 to 50 in under 30 minutes, so it's still pretty good. You also get fast wireless charging at 15 watts, assuming you have the right wireless charger. And you get reverse wireless charging at 4.5 watts, so you can recharge things like the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro. Ta-da! So that's the Galaxy Z Fold 4. This is a lot of phone for a lot of money. Is it worth all of that money? Only if you want a phone and a tablet in your pocket. You know, iPhones are really good, Pixels are really good, other Samsung phones are really good. They're a lot more reliable, they have better app support, and you'll probably be a lot more familiar with them. But for anybody who wants to live on the edge a little bit, this is the phone to get. Assuming you can afford it, it's still really expensive. Samsung has good trade-in deals, but if you don't have anything to trade in, you still have to pay 1,800 bucks. So kind of up to you. All in all though, I really love my time with the Z Fold 4. It looks like we're gonna be able to keep this thing around to do some long-form testing on it, but my general prognosis is it's a great phone. You should buy it if you want a folding phone. It's great.